Welcome back. Now we will have a keynote fireside chat with Luca Morena, co-founder and CEO at Nextatlas. The moderator of this chat will be Jasmina Nikolic, client service director at New Moment. And I have to say that this keynote fireside chat is powered by New Moment. Please, the stage is yours.
Can you hear me? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and colleagues, it is with great honor and enthusiasm that I stand before you today to introduce a true luminary in the realm of philosophy and a visionary in the world of data science and artificial intelligence. Coming from lovely Italy, our guest is PhD in philosophy, so he's seamlessly weaving threads of philosophy into the tapestry of artificial intelligence and statistical predictive analytics. During the panel from Psychohistory to Curious Machines, his insights promise to offer, let's say, a glimpse into the future and future trends, but with depth of understanding that goes much beyond statistical analysis. So let's open our minds to try to connect the gap and to bridge the gap between philosophy and a world of artificial intelligence, data science, and trends. And please join me in welcoming Signore Luca Morena, a true visionary of our talk.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jasmina.
Hello,
thank you
Luca.
so much.
Great to have you in Belgrade. Great to have you at the conference. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. You set the bar so high now, and I'm going to probably disappoint everybody. But no, let me just thank you, because this is my first time in Belgrade, so yeah, I'm so happy and honored. And I'm very happy because, you are an amazing human, and the team at New Moment, wanted me here. I have also to say that the level of professionalism that I'm finding here in terms of how this conference is organized and everything is done here is fantastic. So then, before we go into the actual talk, which is what we're going to discuss, but really, really beautiful place to be. Thank you.
And thank you for being here. So shall we start from this intriguing title of ours for today, like from Psychohistory to Curious Machines. So what does Psychohistory mean to you today, and how far we are going to look at history?
Yeah, I don't know how many of you have read Asimov, of course. So this is more like a clickbaiting. So I wanted to have a title to have people coming into the room. But of course, the problem is that there's lunch. So this is actually a difficult challenge. But no, it's an interesting concept. So if you know, and have you seen the TV series Foundation, which is the rendition for TV of the Asimov books. So these are science fiction books from the 50s. And so in the story, I won't spoil you anything, but there's an important concept in there, which is this discipline called psychohistory, and is the idea of predicting the future by means of a mix of sociology and of course, mathematical modeling. So it's more like, if we had to say there's something that compares to that in now, probably it's data science or some version of it, right? So it's interesting concept also because what we are seeing right now, sorry, I have to also manage the slide here, is that more and more things that are science fictional are going from the fiction side to the science side. So we are witnessing, of course, all the things that are happening with large language models, and we will talk about that. But it's interesting because now we feel that these changes are happening fast, but it's not that they weren't there in the culture before and in the science before. So it's even this concept, which is more like fringe, more pop and science fictional. It's one of the, I think, the coolest concept in science fiction ever. It's something that might turn into some kind of reality. And what I want to then show here and tell to you is that people were working on this concept, even if they didn't call it like this. And probably what we are doing at Nextatlas is, some very small part of a psychohistorical, let's say, little nimble project these days. So I think it's an important one. So it's something that probably we can reuse to look back and interpret what we do as something that was always there as a need, predict. There's a fantastic quote from that book, which is something like a fool can actually see a crisis when it comes, but the best thing is to predict for society when the crisis is coming. So it's not exactly literally like that, but you can see where this is going, because it's important right now, as things change very fast, to be as predictive as we can. So I was saying that I'm going through a number of chapters in this story, and I'm bringing some perspective here that probably if you are data scientists or techie people, it's more like going into the university at the history lesson. So, but then stick with me, and then we get also to the technical part. So there are a number of projects in the last few years that had the ambition not to remake in reality psychohistory, so having a science that can predict future events by looking into behaviors and modeling behaviors through statistical methodologies. But there was the idea that at a certain point, data are the best means that we have to represent human behavior at a larger scale. So we know that now it's like common sense, but it was not common sense almost 20 years ago. So in 2009, this professor from NYU called Lev Manovich, I don't know if you have read something from him, by him. So he founded this movement called cultural analytics, which it's interestingly everything that now is going into understanding human behavior from data science is coming from the engineering side. This is one of the few projects coming from the humanities. So my background is in philosophy. I don't know how many philosophers are in the room. How many? Wow. So we have 2. Okay. This is 3? No, this just scratching. Okay. But of course, the idea of having some machine going through large-scale data sets was also very interesting for a humanist perspective from the humanities. So one of these projects was this one, and he had also this fantastic idea. If you go in one of his papers, then he was describing in 2009 something like a very science fictional dashboard in which you can go and see all the human behaviors and shifts, really also geographically located, and things that are moving culturally and socially. And note that this happens also in the same time in which all of us got fond of data visualization. So now nobody's talking about data visualization anymore, but there has been 10 years in which that was some interesting research field. And so the idea was, how do we represent changes visually and at a large scale? And that was the cultural analytics project. Another one is this one. I think you know this one because as this Mother Jones quote says, it's possibly the greatest time waster in the history of the internet. So if you go on the Google Ngram viewer, have you ever used that? So it's basically you can search for concepts in, of course, millions and millions of books. So it's the largest knowledge base of published books and knowledge. And so you can see culture in the making. So going, let's say, from, I think, the 19th century to, I think, recent books that are being published in the universities and in the academy. So you can search for stuff. I did many through time. So you can search if the philosopher Jacques Derrida is more mentioned than the Beatles. But of course it is. So, but then because it's a very biased data set, this is academy. People typically at the university doesn't study the Beatles, but typically they study Jacques Derrida. So, but it was also the idea that you can go into the culture and in data that are representing human culture at a large scale and find interesting, unseen patterns. So this is the other, let's say, mantra these days. So we are going to use data as a way to look into something that is not really visible to the human eyes. So the scale is important. And in the very first project of psychohistory for Asimov, there were like 2 axioms. So the first one was that the people you are going to study for prediction should be at large scale, so it's a big population. And the other one is very interesting, because there might be questions at the end of the talk, so is that people who are actually the subject of the analysis shouldn't be
aware.
No, shouldn't be aware of the psychohistorical analysis, because otherwise they would change the data from which this is done. And all of this these are chapters in the, let's say, there are many more in the history of how we wanted to use data to represent at large scale human behavior and probably also try to predict what's next, okay? This what's next thing is now become the hottest practice in business, okay? So we're seeing now a bit of a shift. So we're talking, let's say, about science fictional stuff, things that happened in the academy and in research and in culture, and this thing actually now intersect with some very important business need, which is how do I predict what's next for my business, for my marketing campaign, for my new product line, for my new brands. And this is the foresight phenomenon, as we call them. So foresight is basically the practice of doing psychohistory in a more concrete and effective way. So trying to guess what's next in the future. So to answer the question, is psychohistory possible? Well, probably not in the way Asimov was, thinking of it, but probably in some smaller scale, more, concrete way of doing it, I would say yes. And then note that psychohistory was looking into the future, in the far future, so hundreds of years. So he predicted the fall of the Galactic Empire, but we are looking into a shorter future. So something like, is this going to grow next year? Is this going to change in the next 6 months? And this is extremely doable. And this is actually what we do at Nextatlas. So this is, I think that I in this first part, I wanted to be boring. So, and then going from, some interesting science fictional concept that then can turn into more science and reality, and then bring you into something that's, is actually done by companies like ours. So trying to acting on data for, short-term, mid-term predictions that are actually valuable for companies we work with. I don't know if it was clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was actually a great introduction to talk about how can we use and how can we leverage on principles of psychohistory to better understand the complexity of contemporary era.
Yeah, and this is because, you might notice that there are concepts that are basically coming back, and through that lenses, our reality gets more understandable. And it's interesting because philosophical concepts are also like this. And now we are talking a lot about ethics in AI, or these are things that have been there since ages. So it's not that they are new. But then when you move the lens and you apply it into specific realities, then it's almost like it takes on a different meaning and a more
and the
interesting...
level of understanding changes.
Yeah, and these are interesting data. So if you see that, and if you are looking into a special way to do this work and impact on your clients, this is having really impact on the businesses. So when businesses are looking into the data realm in this way with a foresight approach, they're actually performing much, much better. And so this is, where we basically found our place in when we built Nextatlas. So.
And there is an interesting story about Nextatlas. Can you share it with us?
Yeah, so but then the idea goes back, I think, now 10 years, and it was then the idea of transitioning what is called now trend forecasting into the world of big data at the time, and of course then AI more recently. And it was, it was by chance. So I was actually at the university at the time. Then I had this idea, and with my brother, we are Italian, so family business. We built a company. We got funded. It was on paper, so it was. And I have to say that my investors at the time were extremely, crazy and visionary. And so they said, okay, this is nice, but there was no market for that. There was really no market for that. And this is how now we describe ourselves. So we are actually foresight scientists in the sense that the team is made by people probably like you, data scientists, AI experts, but also with tons of insight strategies, which means that they are actually doing the interpretation and providing the insight to the client. But in the very first stage of this adventure, we didn't really have an idea of how to make this. So we were actually reasoning in a vacuum, in emptiness. There was no market demand. So we went to a friend of ours, Giorgia Lupi. She's one of the best.
And very famous now.
Yeah, she's very famous. Her work now are in the MoMA, not these ones, but she's one of. Now she's a partner at Pentagram in New York. But she's one of the best data visualization artists out there. You might. There's a whole history there. So you might know about Aaron Cobling, J.R. Thorpe, Wes Grubbs. This is like the stardom, and I have to say she's a friend. So at the time, I went to her and said, okay, we have this idea and we have the money, but nobody has done this before.
Maybe one day, I'm sorry for interrupting, this will be valuable as you have had sketches from Picasso, but only this time in
I hope
data
so. I hope
visualization.
so. And then I probably will have to frame them. Yeah, but it's and so we went to them at the time. She was in Accurat, the agency that makes these beautiful works, and the brief was we want to marry data and quantities with inspiration. So at the time, the tagline of the company was data-driven inspiration. And we're talking 2014, before DALL-E or whatever. And she came up with a fantastic dashboard. It was the most artistic dashboard ever made. So we had this prototype, and whenever we met clients, from the CEO of Jimmy Choo to, I don't know, they were like, shocked. But the second reaction was, it's impossible for us. And I even went with this to one of the biggest, presenting to all the, the team at the biggest newspaper in Italy, one of the biggest one, called La Stampa. And at the time, there was the director and all the team there, because I thought, this is also a way for publisher in the news to know, and do like pieces on culture in a way that is informed about, data and trends that we find and we analyze. So, but I said, okay, this was this interesting and very funny thing. No, we are so old that we cannot really get into this. But of course, you fast forward 10 years, and this is basically a reality. So we actually had to change a lot of this very original dashboard. And so we learned from the clients as we grew, and we got feedback, and we made extremely user-friendly way to interact with our data. So the thing that we do is very special in a way, because we are not doing what Asimov was saying, take a large population and then predict, analyze their behaviors. So we are actually looking into a very small, well, it's very big, but then
Portion of large population.
It's a portion of a large population into social media. So the data we are talking about is unstructured data from social media, the major ones, so Reddit, YouTube, Instagram, X, now X, unfortunately, and others. And we have ways to basically find out who in these big, public squares, digital public squares, are the ones who are anticipators of behavioral changes.
That's the main criteria.
That's the main criteria.
Early adopters.
Yeah. So now you are not marketers probably, but then this is a definition that is, again, there since ever. Early adopter are the people, in our definition, could be also an organization. It's not that you have to be human, that adopt a behavior, a product, or whatever before the mainstream, before the majority, right? And this is done by a number of means that we have developed through time. So what we did is basically engineer a way to find this early adopter by looking into timeline behaviors and having now also, we have machines that are able to detect, given a profile, and score them as good candidates for our data source, our pool of data sources. And this is done, again, by a number of methodologies. The very early one was what we called the under-the-radar approach. So this might be interesting for you. So it's more like a network analysis. So we were actually validating who had to get into the data source by looking into the relations. So we are not talking influencers here. So it's not influencers. It's just where the expertise is very deep, and this is very connected. And you can go from a gallerist in Berlin to a designer in New York in a few steps. And these are extremely valuable because typically they are on things before the majority. So it's not me, it's not my brother, it's not, it's someone, and this is cross industry. So the other interesting effect of this, you don't have to look precisely into sectors. You get for free, as you do this, global coverage in a sense, and also a sectorial coverage. So you can ask questions to the system, and you will see that are actually relating to different things.
And you're trying to avoid biased profiles, let's say, paid partnerships. So it's not about only excluding influencers, it's about excluding and filtering the organic and right content.
We have a number of methodologies again. So our data sources are our own Zen garden. Okay, so we maintain this as to be the cleanest, as the best and the cleanest possible data source. So this is important because if you go into the universe, social media are super noisy. You have to do a lot of work at the end of the process. So what we do is basically clean up everything at the very beginning. And then in that, we have a number of methodologies that are detecting spammers, that are detecting paid sponsored content and other metrics that are inferred now so that we actually can score them and eliminate them and filter them. And note that we do this also custom, so then we will see a glimpse of the platform. So and then if you go on, you just ask for a demo if you're interested. But what we do is also customized to the client needs. So they might want to have a look into we were mentioning yesterday, this case we did with Unilever in UK. So they wanted to understand what are the emerging companies, brands, in skincare in 6 markets, going from South Korea to Japan to US. And we made a platform for them that is able to extract these brand names. Of course, it's all translated.
We're talking about small brands that
Small
are
brands,
emerging online.
exactly.
Very
And you probably don't know them because they're too small, but they are
but
eating
on
up your
local
market.
markets, they might become a threat.
Yeah, so this was customizing, let's say, this kind of a methodology. So you go into the beauty sector in South Korea, look for a number of profiles that are filtered with these methodologies, and then you use a technology to basically extract what is and give metrics about that. So this is something that if you ask to some big M&A advisor, you will pay for that like $500,000 per year. And we did it like in 2 weeks as a prototype, and of course it's 10 times less expensive. And so yes, this is, for instance, how it works. This is generate. So of course, generative AI is very big, and also for us. And then we have a system now that you can query directly our own platform analysis, and basically build a trend report in seconds by using grounded information from our system, so that it does all the work that a strategist typically does, and this is very powerful because it's real time, so all the data is always updated, is quantitative, so the data is always has some context in numbers. It's not just something that is said, okay. And then we have also I think the largest database of innovation and fresh cases that are correlated, so that the GPT-4 Turbo now can not only correlate the cultural trends and answer, let's say, this kind of question, but also go into all the existing interesting use cases, business cases, and put them and commend them as examples.
Contexts.
That's context.
That's
so you can
important,
go, as in psychohistory, you can go from the very high to the very small, and then you connect that. And this is used by global brands, and this is used for NPD, for marketing strategy, for whatever it is needed. So this is basically automating the trend research work and doing something similar to what we were talking before.
So regardless of the complexity of the data in the backend, end user is able to understand everything, no matter what his background is, or
exactly.
It is always put in context and in very, very understandable.
It's democratizing the research, is providing prediction on a very solid basis. We provide prediction for 1 year. We monitor now 1.6 million concepts, which is, basically all the knowledge out there.
1.6 million
concepts. And we have, for the majority of them, a prediction. So, and you can ask for whatever, and then you get back a prediction and probably cases that are related to that. And if we have curated a number of insights that mostly also now gets, automatically curated by GPT, then you get a very important report on the topic that you are looking for. And then we have systems. So the foresight approach that we mentioned, now it's a huge investment reality in big corporates. So for instance, we are the provider for Mondelez, I don't know if you know them, so they are the makers of Oreo, among others. And it's interesting because they've built this foresight research hub. So it's basically a unit into Mondelez. So there are hundreds of people working on this, and they have an internal system. So it's a data lake, of course, if you want to make it very simple, but it's more complex than that. So they plugged our own prediction, as you can see that there's like a pyramid of content and insights, and we are the building blocks of that. And this is very important for us because it's the final validation. So we have many of this. So now we are doing 4 Barilla in Italy. But it's important because it means something that it's a game changer for the market. It means that these big brands are actually building the infrastructure for foresighting and predictions. And this is a change both in the scale of these activities and also in the skills and depth. So people are actually learning to be users of this kind of technologies, which is a great opportunity for who is building this. So this is actually the market that is answering back after 10 years when we brought that nice sketches that Georgia made, now actually is becoming reality. And this is what makes us go to work in the morning, makes us happy, and it's incredible because they are actually coming back, renewing all the time. And by the way, there's a nice, interesting thing here. So, well, this is real. So they went from a prediction to a product, and they also have this new way of working. So Mondelez has their own snack futures team. So the flow here is that you have the foresight hub, okay, but then you plugged in other people who are actually acting on the information, and so they have a prototyping team building stuff. So snacks that probably are going to be hits or more probably not, and they are iterating a lot on this. And they launched, for instance, this spreadable based on mushrooms. So I don't know if it's good, but then this is actually, they told us that the flow was exactly that. So from prediction, mushrooms are growing as an ingredient, I'm more in different areas, like being functional, and having solid data with that. Of course, maybe complemented with other data, because it's not just that they are very careful in what they experiment. And then having people, okay, this is the brief coming from research. Now, let me see how you do that. And there's an execution there. And then you get something and it's interesting also as a case because they are thinking as developers. So they iterate stuff, even if it's a real product. And they do like a landing page, a pilot. They launch the stuff, they grow the demand, and then and only at a certain point they decide to make them as a real product. So this is how they work. And what I wanted to say is that this is actually how the market is changing. So and it's interesting because it's happening now. It will be even bigger in the future. Well, then if you have questions on all this stuff, then of course I'm happy to answer.
We promise that we will share a couple of trends.
Yeah. So then we usually do each and every year our own annual trend predictions for the next year, and it's more like a marketing thing.
These are short-term trends.
Yeah, these are more like these are indications for the future. But this is how it works. So, for instance, we have a number of. Then you will see you have a timeline. So these are time series in a, basically with a prediction model, right? It's very, very simple stuff for you guys that you do these things. So, but the point is that it's actually something that comes from a number of other data points, which are, the individual increase and prediction of, this kind of concepts. And then this little treat culture trend is meaning that we are going to be happy with small things. So then you are not marketers, so you are not, let's say, the right target to be fascinated by these concepts. But you are. But if you work in Barilla and you are going to build snacks for the next year, you probably want to know that, and you probably want to know that some of the concepts that you see over there. And this is the same for other things. The most interesting one is this one. So the titles, these are human-made. We have many things that are, of course, now, built by GPT and whatever, but still we want to have our human touch on the biggest thing that we put outside. But you can see here, for instance, concept like blind buy. This is a trend about the idea of having the need for more unstructured experiences, not scripted, and you want to be surprised. And this is some it's growing a lot. There are even terminology. Then I asked to my team, what is the Lulu? I don't really know. Do you know what is it? Because I think it's something that the younger people.
But let's share it.
I don't know, but probably you know that. Can you explain?
That.
Okay, thank you. This is very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
So these are, and then if you are my age...
So the Lulu is exploding.
It's exploding, it's growing a lot. You can confirm this probably. And then if you are my age and you work in a big corporate, you don't know this stuff. And you don't even know what this means for you as a business. So what we do is basically translating all these very small phenomena and pills that are happening on social media. And of course, the big assumption here is that social media are somehow a reflection of our behaviors. This can be controversial, so we can talk about that. But then we think that this is happening and this is real, and this is actually confirmed by what our clients are doing. So, and of course, about AI and things that are happening right now in terms of how we are going to deal with automation and machine-created stuff. So, but these are things that, again, you are not the target for this. This is we are going to be the translator for marketers and product managers and brand managers of this kind of phenomena, telling them directions, but going very deep into the data. So what you see here is just the deliverable and the output, and it's not really the deliverable for the company, which is go very deep in terms of analysis. So yes, this is actually probably the last chapter. But then.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, I was just to be clear about. I don't know how much time we have.
We are we are fine with the last question for today's this part of the panel, and we will probably be able to take a couple of questions from the audience. So yeah, there are many of us who are curious human beings, but what happens when machines become curious?
Yeah, this was the question that we've been asking ourselves internally since I think. The last couple of years, mostly this year, with the launch of ChatGPT and everything. So so what we are now seeing is that there's the possibility of building a bit more than what you saw before. So this is the generative part that you saw. This is now for us state of art. So is enterprise level. Big brands are using that, all over the world. But what's next? And because now we can do so much more with what, for instance, GPT-4V can do, or GPTs and agents. So this is the concept. We thought that there are two things. So one is that this system that we have, or at least systems that try to provide knowledge to a user, need to be more responsive when they don't know stuff. So we would like to build what there's the founder of Inflection AI, is called, I don't know if you ever, there's a book that he made, it was very nice. It's Mustafa Suleyman. And he said that we don't have to think about artificial general intelligence as a concept, but as an artificially capable intelligence, which is a less philosophical concept. It's more like, and he proposed like a new Turing test for that. So he said, okay, we get that when we will see an agent or a bunch of agents going from 100K of investment to 1 million in very quick time. And so it's able to change the world in a sense by planning for doing trend analysis before, doing concepts, and probably even going to the market. So you have like basically an end-to-end capability here. So it's not that because it's very big as an ambition, but I think we can build something that it's a part of that, which is basically an end-to-end strategist, meaning you go from research, so we know the trends at large scale, And we want also to provide to our clients concepts and options. So for instance, visualize and probably, so we are already experimenting with white spacing. So there's a nice one that we did last week. So we have client questions like, okay, I'm a car maker, but I want to extend the brand into soft drinks. It's a real case. How can I do that? I know we don't have a straightforward answer. So we might have trends about soft drinks, ingredients, and stuff. But what we can do now is actually having the machines looking into all the trends related to the sectors, going to the large database of innovations, look for the cases that are more relevant, and make a list of untapped opportunities that might be leveraged by that very brand because we feed also the brand DNA to the machine. So you will have someone who can also suggest something that it's more downstream in the process. So now we are covering more upstream stages. And this is, I think, a small example of a curious machine. So meaning, let's find the important part of the knowledge. Like curiosity is something, and this is, I think, an interesting way to put stuff. To be honest, it's not a concept that I came up with. It was in a piece in the New Yorker a few months ago. And it's the idea that machines can now learn, probably, to cover the knowledge gaps, okay? So this means some very, very basic form of self-knowledge, which is interesting. So we don't want to go into, consciousness, which is, things for philosophers and probably religious people. But this is knowing where to get the right information. And it's not just having, it's more adaptive as a system. So we see as a future this kind of example. So you probably seen that. This is from NVIDIA. And these are little agents, doing stuff in Minecraft. So, and it's interesting because these can be orchestrated and can work in swarms. So you can actually look into the future of these things as cooperative systems and not just one single big intelligence, but as an orchestration of specialized and capable intelligence. So this is actually what we are now R&Ding for us in our very specific vertical, but I think it is applicable in many other fields. And I think this is all for me, and I don't know if there are questions.
Well, thank you so much. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience, to use a couple of minutes till the end of the session. Yes, please.
Thank you for the great talk. Thank you both, and congratulations on making something truly unique and new. The first thing that popped into my head when I was listening your conversation was basically what are the data sources, and then you elaborated and told us that you basically scrape social media sites. And so the core question, I think, and this is probably the base operation of your company, so without getting too much into the details, can you a little bit elaborate on the point how you filter the noise? I myself, a few years ago, decided to quit social media because it was just too much. I mean, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram had it all, but I basically came to the conclusion that it gives less and takes more of my time, so I quit. And so, I mean, building on that point, it's probably the main concept that you struggle with, how to filter the noise out. So can you maybe elaborate a bit on this?
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, so thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a mess, because for us, it's very important because this is the place in which people are actually doing the things that we are interested in, so sharing stuff. And so we don't have any other data source in a sense to look into to do what we do, because we need to have people behaving and doing stuff. So in social media, there's a lot of interactions. As for the filtering, this is like a list, a really big list of checks and checkpoints and thresholds that have. The basic ones are, are you posting at this rate? So we also have to way to infer if it's night and day. So you can also spot bots with that. And then of course the under the radar approach is more based on a network analysis validation. So given that we are not doing, let's say, the large scale, it's more like we are, it's finding the gems, and this is, I think, a bit easier because then now that we have a big data set, we also instructed the machine to recognize what is, if a content scores in a specific way. We also have a machine, probably you saw that there in the timeline with all the different colors. Probably I can go back, well, it's not that useful, but so we have way to place like a score to a profile. Given that now we have lots of historical timelines, we can score if a user was early on a topic, so for many topics. And so we also place, and all this, there's also some human checks at sometimes. So we also feed the team with sample lists and say, okay, are these good? Or to suggest even seeds. So we call them seeds. Because when we first do, let's say, the under the radar networking stuff, we can also start from curated seeds done by hand, and then we just enlarge the seed. So there are many. So it's not like a unique approach, because also the different social media, if you go through the official API as we do, allows you for a different way of going to the data. For instance, in Twitter, we used to have the network, so the following the followers. On Instagram, we don't have it anymore. Reddit is different. It's a very different beast. So we have subreddits and everything. So it's a mess, but then we figured out a bit how to do that. So I hope it answers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Let me just check. We should be wrapping up the session. If there is a short question at the end, please go ahead.
It's lunchtime, guys, so
Yes.
I think that you need to eat because it's a long day.
Luca, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie.